Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Monday Study Group. This morning we finish the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs. We started the meeting today in person, and by the way, we had the largest group we've ever had in months. I don't know if that's because we're talking about sex or just because people are not on vacation and have returned from travel, and or coincidence that everybody was suddenly available uh, for this study, but I'll leave that unsorted out. We started by singing today, Love Divine, All Loves Excelling. We used the Hyferdal tune, Love divine, all loves excelling, joy of heaven to earth come down. Fix in us thy humble dwelling, all thy faithful mercies crown. Jesus, thou art all compassion, pure, unbounded love thou art. Visit us with thy salvation. Enter every trembling heart. That tune, and that was the first verse. The remaining verses go like this: Come, Almighty, to deliver. Let us all thy life receive. Suddenly return, and never, never more thy temples leave. Thee we would be always blessing, serve thee as thy hosts above, pray and praise thee without ceasing, glory in thy perfect love. Finish then thy new creation, pure and spotless let us be. Let us see thy great salvation perfectly restored in thee, changed from glory into glory, till in heaven we take our place, till we cast our crowns before thee, lost in wonder, love, and praise. So as you can see, the theme of this song is love, God's love for us, in the same way that we have, at least analogously, the love between the man and the woman in Ecclesiastes. Love divine, all loves excelling, one of the allegorical interpretations of the Song of Songs. But it also has a first legitimate and prior, very human meaning about the importance of physical love between a man and a woman in ancient Israel and also down to the present. So, chapter 6 ended with someone saying, maybe the daughters of Jerusalem, why should you look upon the Shulamite as upon a dance before two armies? And that's a very hard verse we worked on last time a little bit. Nobody knows for sure what it's referring to, but it does refer to the idea of dance. And maybe correspondingly, chapter 7 opens with a reference to the feet of the dancer. This is one of those multiple descriptions of the female lover in the Song of Solomon. But this time, in reverse order, it describes her body from feet to hair. And in the first 5 verses, talks about her feet, perhaps because in a dance you pay attention to the feet of the dancers. Talks about her feet in sandals, her thighs, her navel, her belly, her breasts, her neck, her eyes, her nose. Wasn't always included before. I'm not sure she would, in the modern world at least, be complimented by the fact that she had a towering nose, like the Tower of Lebanon overlooking Damascus. But then her head and her flowing locks are like royal purple, or perhaps bound with purple cloth, or perhaps she's wearing purple and the black shininess of her hair reflects onto the shiny black hair the purple of her of her scarf, of her dress. The result is that the king is held captive in the tresses of her hair. So this typical description shows in the imagination, maybe, rather than is he actually speaking to her in person, or is this his remembered imagination of her as he thinks about her as she is not present to him? It's also possible he's writing this love poetry to her and describing her in this way, and that he would have sent this as a letter to her. Maybe the whole book is in some way his his letter to her. But that seems less likely than the fact that because of the fact that she is the main speaker throughout the book from beginning to end. This seems like a woman's voice, and it seems in a very countercultural way a woman's voice, since women were to be subject to their husbands and their fathers, and she thinks to her brothers, or at least they think she should be subject to them. But throughout the book, we have this very independent-minded woman who is clearly expressing her own preferences in love, not to be bound by some contractual marriage that her parents may or may not have arranged, which would have been the custom. She's asserting her independence over against the customary disposition of the woman, the daughter, by the family in marriage. That's not a point of view that she takes to. So after this brief description, then he starts another one in verses 6 through 9. He says in general about her that she is fair and pleasant, O beloved one, delectable maiden. You are as stately as a palm tree, or your stature is like a palm tree, and your breasts are like the clusters on the palm tree, probably a date palm. So he says, you are so attractive as a palm tree, I will attach myself to you. I will climb the palm tree and lay hold of its branches. But then her breasts instead become clusters of the vine rather than dates. They become grapes, clusters of the vine. And as one person in our group pointed out, she has not been eating garlic. Her breath has the scent like apples. Your kisses are sweeter than wine. We have a song in our recent time about your kisses are sweeter than wine, like the best wine. It goes down smoothly, gliding over the lips and the teeth. So again, a strongly physical description in the intention of the male to describe his delight in the physicality of his beloved. Then she responds in verse 10, I am my beloved's, and his desire is for me. Yes, we certainly see that, don't we, in the previous description and in all the previous descriptions in other chapters, verses 4, or chapter 4, chapter 1, both of which, besides chapter 7, contained an extended description of the woman and her physical attractiveness. So his desire is certainly for her. But it's interesting that this little phrase, and his desire is for me, reverses, I think it's Genesis 3:16, where God says to the woman in the Garden of Eden, your desire will be for him. But she also knows that his desire is for her, and she belongs to him. Come, she then says to her beloved, come, let us go forth into the fields and lodge in the villages. Let us go out early to the vineyards, see whether the vines have budded, whether the grape blossoms have opened, whether the pomegranates are in bloom. She invites him to come with her. This is the first time in the book she's done the inviting. He's done the inviting before this. But now she invites him to come with her and says, there I will give you my love. So wherever they have been, she is calling her beloved to come with her and to go out into the fields, into the rural area, from the village, from the city, from Jerusalem possibly, out into the countryside to be with her. There I will give you my love, she says. And then in verse 13, it says, the mandrakes give forth fragrance. Mandrakes are a plant, I believe. You may know this way better than I do. Mandrakes are a plant which were thought to, a plant which was thought to have aphrodisiac qualities, properties. So it was to enhance fertility or sexual attractiveness, erotic desire. They give forth a fragrance which was thought in the ancient world to enhance one's sexual appeal, both in the presence of animals as well as humans. And there are biblical stories earlier in the Old Testament about mandrakes and their association with fertility. The mandrakes give forth fragrance, and over our doors are all choice fruits, new as well as old. She has invited him to come with her. She says she will give him her love, and this love includes symbolically all choice fruits, new as well as old, perhaps new experiences as well as old experiences, although new and old are often what we call a merism, merism. A merism is two ends of the spectrum to include everything in between, like good and evil, right and wrong, light and darkness, composing everything in between. So new and old could be all the choice fruits of love, new as well as old. One of my commentaries said that it might mean the fruits that we normally have in our agricultural region, as well as new imported fruits that would be especially available to the household of wealthy people. I'm not inclined to take it literally that way. I'm inclined to think that she's talking about physical, sexual experiences that she is, as the fruit of her love, is offering to her beloved, which she has laid up for you, which I have laid up for you, O my beloved. So she has prepared herself to give him her love in this very fruitful way, new as well as old, in the presence of the mandrakes, which had these aphrodisiac qualities. Then in chapter 8, she says, oh, that you were like a brother to me. We may find that a little odd, since it would imply, if she's sexually interested in him, it would imply incest. But that's not how it's being used here, is it? She thinks that if other people thought he, the male lover, was in fact her brother, then she could be out with him in public. This is still true, as somebody pointed out this morning, in some areas of the Middle East, that women were not allowed to be out in public with another male that wasn't their family member, like a lover or a male friend. Not to be done. But if people thought that he, the lover, was in fact her brother, then of course she could be out with him in public. If I met you outside, I could kiss you. You're just my brother, and no one would despise me. I could lead you, in fact, bring you into the house of my mother and into the bedchamber of the one who bore me, and no one would think anything was amiss. But if it's the lover, then of course that would not be possible. I would give you my spiced wine to drink, the juice of my pomegranates. But he's not her brother, he's her lover. And so she imagines that his left hand were under her head and his right hand was embracing her. He would be lying on her right side facing her, and his left hand would be under his head and his right hand would be under her waist embracing her. The section then closes with, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, do not stir up or awaken love until it is ready. Well, in the previous times when she has spoken those words, she called the daughters of Jerusalem to swear by something. Not always. Back in 5:8, she says, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, tell him this, that I am faint with love. But in a previous text, I think somewhere maybe in chapter 1, chapter 2, verse 7 is a good example. I adjure you, daughters of Jerusalem, I adjure you by the gazelles or the wild does, do not stir up love until it is ready. But here in chapter 8, she doesn't adjure them by anything. It just, she urges them to swear that they will not stir up or awaken love until it's ready. But it has sounded all through the book as though she is quite ready. But she warns them to take love seriously. All right, then verse 5 through the rest of the book is in some ways difficult, problematic. We have more questions than we have answers, so there's possibilities. Robert Alter, in his commentary on the Song of Solomon, says something like, the writer of this book had available other lines of poetry that he hadn't already used and that he wanted to include. So here at the end, he inserts into his text, which is not a story, it's a collection of love poems. We keep looking, we keep looking for a story here, for a narrative. There isn't one. This is a collection of love poetry. It's related, the poems are related to each other because they all are about the desire of the male and the female lover for each other. But here at the end, Robert Alter thinks at least we have some other lines of poetry that are not connected to the overall, in the same way, the overall story of the male and the female lovers. So I don't know that that necessarily is true. It seems to me like, for example, with verse 5 of chapter 8, who is that coming up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved? Well, this sounds like the voice of the daughters of Jerusalem. The beloved and the woman are coming up from the wilderness, and a third party, usually the daughters of Jerusalem, are commenting, saying, who is this who comes up from the wilderness? Maybe that's where they've been. She invited him in chapter 7 to come and go with her into the fields. That's not the wilderness necessarily, but maybe they've been out and now they're returning to the town. My NRSV thinks that this section should all be called homecoming. I think that's introducing something into the text that's not necessarily there, but it was the editor's interpretation who put together this NRSV text. Who is this who's coming up from the wilderness leaning on her beloved? Well, we know it's the woman lover and the male lover. Then the woman seems to say, under the apple tree I awakened you. There your mother was in labor with you. There she who bore you was in labor. Maybe the male lover's mother was a part of the same village and went into labor as she was sitting under this same apple tree that the two lovers are now approaching. Under the apple tree I awakened you, or that they are remembering their lovemaking under this apple tree. Then someone says, verses 6 and 7, it could be read either way, as the male lover speaking about the female lover, or the female lover speaking about the male. There seems to be in our group a preference for reading it the latter way, that this is the woman talking. Again, if your study Bible introduced this as the speech of the woman, that's just an opinion. You don't have to hold that opinion. That's some editor telling you that they think the woman is speaking here, but there really isn't anything specific that would necessitate it being the woman lover. So the words are, set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm, like an armband maybe, that a band of beads, or a sign that the male lover has a lover who he's taken. If this is the woman speaking, then she might be saying to him, I want to see some physical evidence that you accept me as your single beloved, as a seal upon your heart, my male lover friend. For love is as strong as death. That's the strongest thing, death. So love is as strong as death. It has a passion that is fierce as the grave. Normally in the Song of Songs we have love as a celebration of life, but here it is the power of death is recognized, and the woman, if this is the woman, says that love has as much power as death and as much fierceness as the grave. It flashes fire, a raging flame, a good way to describe the passion of physical love between men and women. In fact, it's unconquerable. Many waters can, if it's a fire, many waters even can't quench it. Floods couldn't even drown this fire of passion that we have for each other. If one offered for love, in fact, all the wealth of his household, it would be utterly scorned. Love is worth more than all the wealth of a household. So there's a little poem here about the power and endurance and heat and passion of love. Then, in verse 8, we have a change of speaker, don't we? We have a little sister, and she has no breasts. What shall we do for our sister on the day when she is spoken for? Well, I don't know if the Hebrew reads in a kind of poetic way, but this is a little bit of a sing-song, it seems to me, by the brothers of the female lover. They still think of her as a child. Now, if you've been paying attention in the Song of Solomon, that's absurd. But they still think it's their job to protect their little sister, and that she's immature. She has no breasts. She's not grown up. Don't pay attention to her. They say, if she is a wall, we're going to strengthen that wall and build upon her a battlement of metal, of precious silver. But if she is a door, then we will enclose her with boards of cedar. Well, a wall is one thing and a door is another thing. A wall is solid and has no entry point, but a door is an entry point. So if she is a wall, she is not sexually available. But if she is a door, perhaps she is sexually available, or at least she thinks she is, or the brothers think that she thinks she is, and they don't think so. So they say they will protect her, they will enclose her, they will keep her away from anybody else. That's verses 8 and 9. The last time we saw the brothers was back in chapter 1 when they told her to keep her own vineyard, but she says she hasn't kept her own vineyard. Now the woman speaks again in response to the brothers' claim that she is immature. She said, well, I was a wall. I'm not a wall anymore. And my breasts, they're like towers. It's not that I have no breasts. My breasts are towers. They are strong. They are impressive and visible. So I'm not who